great exodus of Americans, Florida served as the most desired destination, the promised land of sanity in a world that has increasingly gone off its rocker. We have embraced freedom. We have maintained law and order. We have protected the rights of parents. We've got more to do. I can tell you this, I have only begun to fight.
After weeks of attacks from Donald Trump, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is poised to make his White House bid official this week, joining the growing Republican primary field. Let's bring in the roundtable for former DNC Chair Donna Brazile, former Justice Department spokesperson Sarah Isgur, ABC News political director Rick Klein, and Washington Post congressional reporter Mariana Sotomayor. Welcome to everybody. What a morning. And Mariana, I want to start with you, and I want to go back to the debt ceiling. You heard Congressman Arrington, you heard President Biden this morning. You're up there every single day covering this. How do you see this?
Each party is very entrenched, and I think you have noticed both Republicans and Democrats, especially the Republicans who are in the room, their tone and tenor has changed. They are legitimately concerned, and it is a concerning point. Where we are right now is they're trading just politics at this point, with Republicans wanting to enact and tell the Senate to vote on this bill that the House passed, House Republicans passed. That's never going to become law. Democrats really trying to appease their liberal base, also saying, look, we're trying to we don't want to cut any more spending. We are really trying to negotiate here. Both parties are at this moment not speaking, so it will be very significant in the next couple of hours. McCarthy and Biden are supposed to speak. Biden will be back in the U.S. We'll see how this week pans out. But the more time that we spend with these two groups not meeting, it really does raise the stakes. And it could come to question whether McCarthy, does he pull out to try and appease some of these conservatives in his conference? And the Senate has to step in. Those are the questions that I think we maybe might have an answer to later this week, but we'll just be a week away from this potential default date.
And Donna, the president is supposed to call Speaker McCarthy from Air Force One. How do you think that call will go? What are they negotiating on that call? Do we have any idea?
Well, you know, I'm not one to write a script for the president, but I would say, first of all, Kevin, I just called to say I love you. Shout out to Stevie Wonder. And then I would go further and say, look, I'm arriving back home later this evening, I'm sorry. Come on over to the White House. Let's have an after-meal cocktail, whatever you want to call it. I prefer a cocktail, but maybe those gentlemen just would like to have some green tea. The bottom line is negotiation is about give and take. President Biden put his fiscally responsible budget on the table back in March. The Republicans came back with their budget cuts at the end of April. They have to give a little to get something out of this deal, but the last thing is to draw these bright red lines that nobody can cross.
And Sarah, McCarthy's in a tough spot here, right?
Yes and no. I mean, I think Democrats were really counting on sort of the weakness of the McCarthy speakership. And in fact, McCarthy's having probably the best few weeks he's had in his entire political life. The Biden administration had a chance to do this when they controlled both the House and the Senate. They didn't. Then he had 97 or so days that he could have been negotiating, said, we're not going to negotiate on this. Now Biden comes to the table and says, we're ready to negotiate. This is a real, I think we'll look back and see it as a huge political liability for the Biden administration that they kept saying no, and now they're up against the wall. And by the way, it's not like the House can snap their fingers and this happens. You've got to actually draft the thing even after they agree to it. You've got 72 hours notice.
Yeah, what happened to that timeline of
right?
It has to be this weekend, right? And Rick, I know the latest ABC Washington Post poll shows Americans divided about who they would blame if there is a default. But there's lots in that poll.
Yeah, and look, there's a lot of political fallout from a default. And you heard President Biden just this morning saying he thinks that there's MAGA Republicans who are rooting for the default because it would hurt the economy and hurt his presidency, that hurt his own re-election chances. And I think there's going to be, I think that was a preview of some of the White House and some of the Democratic messaging we're going to see. To Sarah's point, McCarthy got a win by even having these negotiations. And he's put himself in a position now to have these very high-level talks that he's been seeking for a long time. But the Democrats are hoping to flip the script a bit because they're saying, look, we want those Republicans to own those cuts that they just put out there, defend tax cuts for the rich, and potentially defend the idea of going into a default. There's a lot of political gamesmanship that I think we're still going to see play out, and there still isn't that urgency. We'll see if today's phone call changes that.
It seemed urgent to me this morning, pretty darn urgent, and we got 11 days to go. Let me just ask you, Mariana, do you think either side will let this default?
I don't think so. I will give McCarthy credit that his leadership team since the beginning of this year has done a lot to try and tell Republicans and inform them what a default could mean. Democrats also understanding that. There have been some discussions before we hit this standstill where they were trying to trade notes, where they could possibly reach a deal. When do we get back to that? When do they get back to trying to parse out those details? That's what we don't know.
And Donna, you heard Arrington there say as well, Congressman Arrington, that negotiations didn't start soon enough, or they don't really have an offer on the table. Chris Van Hollen obviously came back with that. But should President Biden have started negotiations earlier? He did put it off. They said they refused to negotiate at first.
Well, the president has been very clear about what he will negotiate. Look, if you want to negotiate on the spending side of this, the president has been out front and saying, here's what I'm willing to give. And $3 trillion over 10 years, $200 billion a year, that's a lot to start with. So this notion that the president has said, I'm not negotiating, he said, no, the default of this country, the fact that millions of Americans are dependent on their benefits at the end of this month, that should bring everybody to the table. My mother used to say, you don't play with fire. Everybody gets burned. We all will get burned. The American economy will get burned. The world economy will get burned. But the vulnerable citizens in our society, including our seniors, our children, our veterans, they don't deserve this. They deserve to have the debt raised because that's the bills we've already incurred, and then we can negotiate on the spending.
Okay, and I want to turn to 2024, as urgent as these other problems are. Tim Scott this week, Ron DeSantis officially announcing. Does this turn anything around for DeSantis? He's consistently polled behind Trump.
This is the most consequential week in the 2024 campaign because you're going to have these two major candidacies. And we just don't know about DeSantis. He's had a rough ride of it in the pre-campaign, in the preseason. Maybe looking a little bit better with the trip to Iowa and the New Hampshire. His allies feel like he's poised to kind of start to surprise people with this. He's going to roll it out around a big donor summit that he has this week, which I think is its own message. Similarly, Tim Scott's got a lot of money. These are two significant candidacies that are entering the race. To me, it's a reminder of how much still has to happen in this race, how much hasn't happened yet. We're still about 3 months away from the first debate. We still have major candidates. Mike Pence coming in the next couple of weeks. We may still get other news out of other contenders. All of these things still haven't happened. So we've been obsessed over the ups and downs over these things. And DeSantis
and will continue to be.
And will be. That's what we do. But DeSantis has stumbled, but there's still a core group of donors and even people answering polls that want to see what this guy's got. The big question to me is he willing to take Trump on directly and right out of the gates? Because that's what everyone in the Republican Party is looking for.
And Sarah, to that point, on a call with donors earlier this week, DeSantis said about the state of the race, you have basically three people at this point that are credible in this whole thing, Biden, Trump, and me. And I think of those three, two have a chance to get elected president, Biden and me, based on all the data in the swing states, which is not great for the former president and probably insurmountable because people aren't going to change their view of him. What about that pitch, and is that right?
Look, this is DeSantis's strategy. In the primary, he's not going to run a national campaign. He's focusing on Iowa and New Hampshire. Their theory is the national polls can say what you want about Trump and DeSantis, but if DeSantis wins Iowa and New Hampshire, those national polls turn on a dime. I think they're right about that. The question is, do we still have local races in Iowa and New Hampshire, or has this all become so nationalized? In terms of the general election, again, certainly the case that DeSantis wants to make, that Donald Trump cannot win in a general election. The polling's a little bit more mixed on that, and I think that's also true even within the GOP primary electorate. There's been polls asking, would you rather have someone who fights for your issues or someone more likely to beat Joe Biden? The fights for your issues is actually beating the beat Joe Biden option right now. DeSantis can't just win this with anti-Trump or non-Trump voters. He's going to have to win over Trump voters to get across the line. That's why this week is so important.
And Donna, DeSantis has been touting his record in Florida, calling it the boldest and most far-reaching agenda the modern GOP has ever seen. Part of that agenda has been going after our parent company, Disney, and this week, Disney scrapped a $1 billion project that could have meant 2,000 jobs in Florida. How does all that play out?
He's punching above his weight. Look, the race is Donald Trump to lose, and Mr. DeSantis is going to try to run as Donald Trump without the baggage, with a lot of money and maybe better hair. I don't really know. But here's what I'm going to be looking for. I'm going to look at Tim Scott, because he's a little sunnier. He's a more of a compelling, compassionate conservative. But back to Mr. DeSantis. I'm not a fan of Mr. DeSantis. I'm not a fan not only because of his attacks on Disney, his attack on history, his attack on race, his attack on banning books, his attack basically on real clear American values, trans kids. So let Mr. DeSantis run. Let him try to run to the right of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is going to just smack him across the head. But the bottom line is, can he sell himself in Iowa, New Hampshire? Can he sell himself to voters? Can he come across as authentic, as real, as somebody who can do retail politics without just smiling his way through it? I still believe that Donald Trump is going to become the nominee of the Republican Party.
Mariana, do you agree with that about Trump? And also Tim Scott, it's true, he's kind of painting himself as more of a Ronald Reagan candidate.
Yeah, I mean, we have seen time and time again, Trump just comes out on top. And I think that right now the polling is showing that. Of course, there's so many more weeks and news cycles to go until we really know what happens here. But Sarah, you made a very good point about DeSantis on the fact that he doesn't want to back down. That's the name of his super PAC, right? And the fact that polls are showing someone who fights for you. And I think DeSantis is really trying to be that fighter against Trump, saying, look, I'm not going to back down fighting against Disney. Will that work? We don't know. And to your point about Tim Scott, he's trying to kind of be in the middle of that. Doesn't mean he's a moderate, but trying to kind of find a way, literally away from that noise. But that could be complicated too in a primary. That might be better in a general election. But I don't know how those candidates who are just trying to be traditional conservatives who have the backing of many people on Capitol Hill privately, if that's going to really be able to motivate voters.
And Rick Scott and Nikki Haley are running 2016 campaigns in 2024. I was in a 2016 campaign. The attack, the guy who's the front runner other than Donald Trump, we've tried that. It results in Donald Trump being the nominee. That's, I think, a very frustrating part of those campaigns and not a winning strategy.
And Rick, we have about 20 seconds. I want to go back to the polls from earlier this month that found Biden trailing DeSantis by 7 points in a head-to-head matchup in a Biden-Trump rematch.
Yeah, that was the ABC News Washington Post poll. It may be an outlier, but I think for Democrats, it should be ringing alarms, because this is going to be a close election. This is not going to be a blowout, whether it's Trump or DeSantis or anyone else. It's going to be a closely contested race.
It sure will be. Thanks very much to all of you.